Well, this is the spring of 2021. And what that means is that I became a Buddhist 42 years ago, a long time. And yet, even though I have certainly had contact with Buddhist groups of various traditions, and certainly have communicated with many, many Buddhists over the decades, again, ones who have adhered to many different approaches to Buddhism, I have never actually formally joined a particular Buddhist organization or temple or church. But I did that this last week, and I just wanted to make you all aware of it in terms of sort of a reflection of my own personal journey. And the organization that I joined is the West Los Angeles Buddhist Temple. Now, why did I do that? Well, in the context of the pandemic, it's been a terrible, tragic kind of event, still ongoing. That's negatively affected many, many individuals and families over the course of the entire world. And I can't overstate the amount of suffering that's been associated with COVID-19. That said, there have also been, on the positive side, an increase during this period of time in the number of remote or virtual kinds of events and contacts people have had with individuals and groups far flung from their home turf. And I think most of you may know, or some of you may know, that there really are not many Buddhists in my home turf, in other words, in the area where I live. And certainly, while maybe an hour from here, there are some Zen Buddhists and Tibetan Buddhists and even Theravadan Buddhists, there are no Pure Land Buddhists, and certainly no Shin or Jodo Shinshu Buddhists. And as I think you know, in addition, my own primary affiliation in terms of my sentiment, my feelings of identification and resonance is with the Shin Buddhist teachings of Shinran Shonin. So, this has been a dilemma for me for a long, long time, and I've done various things to try to remedy my isolation, including, putting out a newsletter called Buddhist Notes from the Boondocks, including developing an organization called the Wider Shin Buddhist Fellowship. And I've had some contact with the Buddhist Churches of America, certainly. In fact, I went to one of their national meetings and was benefited by the gracious support and mentorship of Reverend Tsuji, who was the bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America, but who later became the minister, so-called, at the Ikoji Temple up in the Washington, D.C. area. And at that temple, I underwent what they call a Sarana affirmation ceremony, where frankly, too, I was given a Buddhist name called Daigyo, or great practice. And of course, in Shin Buddhism, the great practice is saying the name Namu Amida Butsu. In any case, just to get off on one other side comment, is that you can tell from my channel that I'm not rigidly tied into the Shin Buddhist doctrine or narrative or belief system, if you will, as some are within that tradition. So I'm not a fundamentalist, I would say it that way. And I do believe that in the context of, for example, the wonderful Lotus Sutra's notion of expedient means, as I've gone over many times in my videos, that the Buddhism provides a variety of kinds of approaches that enable people to relate to it who may have very different kinds of psychological makeups and spiritual needs. But anyhow, Shin Buddhism is my preferred kind of approach, and the way I think about myself in relation to the universe, and the way I experience the greatest degree of comfort insofar as my own spirituality is concerned. So naturally, I would want to, if I ever joined a formal organization, would want to have it to be a Jodo Shinshu temple or church. Now, a couple of things I've been doing lately that have been very gratifying, again, in the context of COVID, is I've been attending a Sangha a small group of people that are living in Texas who moved to Texas from California in the context of Toyota moving its headquarters. And that service, which is held once a month, is an opportunity really to get to know people on a more personal basis. And the service is headed up by Reverend Marvin Harada, who's the current the bishop of the Buddhist Churches of America. The Buddhist Churches of America are, one major branch of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. I think the headquarters in Japan is called Hangwanji, which means primal vow. And there are two branches, two main branches. I think there are multiple branches of the Jodo Shinshu faith, but the main two are the Nishi Hangwanji and the Higashi, or Higashi Hangwanji. And the BCA is associated, I believe, with the Nishi Hangwanji, which is the sort of the Western school. Now, interestingly, I think in Japan, there are two major mother temples, if you will, one for Nishi and one for Higashi, and they're right next to each other. And I think one is called Western because it's west of the other one, and the other one is called Eastern because it's east of the other one. But anyhow, the BCA was established way back at the end of the 19th century with the Japanese immigrants that came into Canada and to the United States, the Western United States. And there are separate Nishi Hangwanji sort of not temples, but organizations, each of which has multiple temples under it, one in Canada and one in Hawaii, as well as the one in the contiguous United States, which is the BCA. So the other thing I've been doing is attending seminars being offered by the BCA Center for Buddhist Education, and these are great. If you haven't made yourself aware of them or checked any of them out, I would really encourage you to go to the BCA website and go to the CBE, or Center for Buddhist Education, sort of link, and see if you can't find the way to register or sign up for one of these, typically Saturday seminars, about 2 hours long each, and they're free, but of course any donations would be welcome. But these have been excellent. All that is to say, and it's getting really long-winded in terms of getting to the point, is that also in the context of COVID, and having learned about this through a Buddhist friend of mine in California, Diane, she started sending me links to this West LA Buddhist temple. And I found their services, which I've been viewing online on Sundays here in the Eastern Standard Time. They've been at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, to be very gratifying. I have the impression that it's largely, frankly, a Japanese American congregation, and the lead minister or priest, I think minister is the appropriate term there, is of Japanese heritage, as is the assistant minister. But the content of their talks is something I can relate to and reflects a fairly traditional kind of interpretation of the Shin narrative. In addition, subsequent to the service, the assistant minister, she conducts kind of a reflections session, which is an opportunity to, hear some of her teaching, as well as to weigh in with questions and comments from among those who have stuck around subsequent to the formal service. So anyhow, I decided to go ahead and join that particular temple, which again is kind of weird since it's probably like 3,000 miles away from where I live. But in any case, as Reverend Harada, the bishop of the BCA, indicated to me when I informed him of my decision, he said, well, maybe sometime you will be able to visit there. And certainly my hope is that I will. But I sort of joked to him that one time in the past, I attended a psychology conference out there in Southern California, and visited LA and had a rental car and drove on some of those highways there, and made the point that that was kind of like taking my life in my hands. So I told him if I'm out there again, I'll probably use Uber or Lyft. So, but anyway, that's beside the point. I'll just close by mentioning one other thing regarding Reverend Harada, who in some sense I would characterize as having a more progressive kind of view the Shin tradition, in the sense that he expresses a greater openness, for example, to encouraging meditation kinds of techniques, and maybe a less literal interpretation as one option relative to the way we think about Dharmakara and the primal vow, and rebirth in the Pure Land. But he's a very, very warm, caring fellow who's an excellent communicator and tells some great stories. And his teachings are very practical and can be related to in a common sense kind of way. And I want to make you aware that he does like a weekly, he calls it Dial the Dharma talk. And I've just listened to one of these because I just found out about it recently. But let me make you aware that it's an 800 number, a toll-free 800 number that you can call, and he changes the talk every Wednesday, usually in the late afternoon or evening. And the number is 800-817-7918. So again, if you're interested in just sort of hearing his weekly Dharma talk, which is a brief kind of talk, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes or so, you can call the number 800-817-7918. So it's a journey, folks. It's a journey, and different ones of us are on different paths and different stages of the journey. But as is taught in the Buddhist religion, we are fortunate to be reborn in human form, because in this human form, we have the capacity through our consciousness and ability to think about things and reflect on our own existence and our own life sort of journey, if you will, that we have the opportunity to be exposed to the Dharma. And if we are exposed to the Dharma in this human life, what an additional blessing that is. And so I'm grateful, and that is my main religious, if you will, sentiment, is a sense of gratitude and appreciation, certainly for being born as a human, for being exposed to the Dharma, and beyond that, for being saved by Amida's primal vow, such that in spite of my inadequacies, I need not fret about the fact that I can't become perfect in this life, but am confident that when I die and enter the Pure Land, I will then become a Buddha, and as a Buddha can take the opportunity to come back as a bodhisattva and help beings who are suffering in ways that I can never, never expect to be able to do in my lifetime, having these limitations associated with this body and this emotional mental framework that is so consumed by greed, aversion, and ignorance. Namu.